What a bizarre situation here. But this is the first time in history this has ever happened where a Speaker of the House has actually been ousted. Matt Gaetz, a man of his words, really is what he's proven to be, has shown Kevin McCarthy that, look, you cannot lie, you cannot just continue to shuffle us off. We made demands, we got you the speakership, and we expect results. And then you didn't give us the results. And so we gave you exactly what we said we were going to give you, which is the boot. And that is what Kevin McCarthy got. So if you remember, if you rewind back to January when there was the big race, Kevin McCarthy, I think it took, 15 votes or 16 votes, rounds of voting before he finally actually became Speaker of the House. And in order for him to get that, he had to cater to a faction of about, it originally started off with, I think, about 22, and then it kind of dwindled down to 16, and then it kind of dwindled down to 10, and then it became 8 of hardcore holdouts who were basically voting against him. They were voting for other people like Jim Jordan, or they just had other random people they were voting for and not Kevin McCarthy. And they were refusing to give him the speakership because they wanted certain things from him. Kevin McCarthy eventually negotiated his way to the speakership with these holdouts. The main leader of that holdout group was Matt Gaetz, and he really held Kevin McCarthy, quite honestly, hostage in the situation. And ultimately, Kevin McCarthy caved and gave Matt Gaetz what he wanted, which was just a few concessions. And one of those concessions being that the rules would allow for a single member of the House to call a revote on booting the Speaker of the House out. And Kevin McCarthy did not want that rule. I mean, which speaker would? Would you really want a rule that would allow one single disgruntled member of the party to just say, that's it, let's call a vote and oust you from the speakership? Kevin McCarthy did not want to give that to Matt Gaetz, but he ultimately did. And it came back to bite him in the rear end because now he's officially ousted. So ultimately, Matt Gaetz did not feel like Kevin McCarthy was living up to his promises, and he did. He held his feet to the fire and got him booted. So what's interesting about this, though, is that Kevin McCarthy, I'm sure he blames Matt Gaetz, but he's got to really only blame himself, quite honestly, because if you're going to make promises to a faction of people who held you hostage, the way that the squad refused to do to Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this is one of those things where you've got the squad, they come in, they're like, we're here to make change. We're going to defeat the establishment. That old guard, they got to go. And ultimately, what did the squad do? What did all those progressives do? They just went in and just got absorbed by the blob, and they became them. And actually, and we're going to get into this tonight, AOC has a shot at being Speaker of the House. I'm going to show you why. And that is probably why she's now been absorbed into the machine. I always wondered, what was it that caused them to change? Why would they go in there with they just seemed like remember when she first got there and she held a protest outside of Nancy Pelosi's office? And the thought was, wow, she's really going to do it. She's really going to do it. And then suddenly it was, well, Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi, we're not going to go against Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi. And it was a wonder, why in the world was she behaving that way? Well, now I have figured it out, because as we're going through this, who is going to be the next Speaker of the House? Will it be Donald Trump? That's the big question everybody has. Or will it be someone else? When you start doing the research into that and knowing what makes a person qualified to be Speaker of the House, you realize AOC has a shot. I mean, she won't be, because it'll probably be Hakeem Jeffries, but she's right up there, and I'm going to show you why. But let's first get to the sweet revenge before we get into who is going to be the next Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy, I'm sure he's blaming Matt Gaetz. I'm sure he's blaming himself a bit, but he's also blaming Nancy. And he's really pissed off at Nancy for allowing the Democrats to vote with the faction of angry Republicans, the 8 angry Republicans who voted to oust him. Most Republicans wanted to keep him, but only 8 Republicans wanted to get rid of him, and all the Democrats said, yeah, let's get rid of him. And what Kevin McCarthy's upset about is that Nancy Pelosi didn't have her whole base vote present. That would have been the thing to do, is have Democrats vote present and not challenge the situation. Really, he wanted her to uphold the status of the chair, of the speakership, of the office, to you know, like to, out of for the sake of, I don't know, decency and decorum and all those other things that politicians like. He wanted her to behave in that way. And I don't know, there's some fairness to that. Most Republicans wanted to keep him as speaker. 8 Republicans didn't. Democrats aren't going to like any Republican, so they're going to vote to oust any Republican who's in there. So really, he got ousted by a very small minority of people because Democrats are going to be against you anyway, so you can't even count them, and vice versa when it's the other way around. So he's mad at Pelosi. So what did he do? So the speaker pro temp, this is the temporary speaker that's there now, is a Kevin McCarthy supporter, and he actually now the speaker has control over the offices in the Capitol building. So there's a bunch of these offices that can be just kind of delegated out. The speaker has the discretion to decide who gets to sit in those offices. And the reason why those offices are desirable is because they're right there, right next to the House voting floor. So everybody wants to be right there rather than having to walk across the street. So Nancy Pelosi has one of those offices. She had given, when she was speakership, she had given Republicans many of those offices just out of courtesy because they had already had those offices. It's usually saved for high-ranking members, usually saved for senators, but the speaker can divvy them out. Well, the new speaker pro temp went in there and said, "Get the hell out, Nancy Pelosi. You're being evicted." And he evicted her. He evicted her from her office and also evicted all the other Democrats from the offices, and then handed the keys to Nancy Pelosi's office, the new keys, because they rekeyed the door. They gave the new keys to guess who? Kevin McCarthy. Yeah, Kevin McCarthy is going to be now taking over that office. That was once Nancy Pelosi's office. So that is his sweet revenge. Kind of petty, but kind of funny. So Nancy has her own office, of course, in the Cannon building, which is across the street. So she's going to have to walk, and she's no longer going to have her little, easy access to the House floor office. So she was like, well, I guess they care more about office space and they care about other things that are important to this country. I don't care, whatever. She's in California right now. She was unable to vacate the office, but her staff apparently did. And Kevin McCarthy is going to be taking over that office. So that was just kind of a funny thing that happened in this whole thing, that there's like this revenge and real war going on between Kevin McCarthy and his supporters and now Nancy Pelosi. And I'm sure Matt Gaetz is going to get it. So let's look, actually, we're going to move kind of quickly here, but let's look at who could be the next Speaker of the House, because a lot of people are wondering if it's going to be Donald Trump. Now, he can be. You do not have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker. Anybody could be Speaker. You could be Speaker. I could be Speaker. Donald Trump could be Speaker. He's apparently considering maybe, or I think he's just playing to the press, quite honestly. I couldn't really imagine, well, actually, I could imagine him doing it. I could imagine him saying, you know what, actually, I'm going to be Speaker for a while. The problem is he's on the campaign trail and he's also battling a lot of legal issues. So it would be difficult for him to be Speaker of the House while also campaigning for president, going and doing rallies around the country, while also battling all of the numerous lawsuits that he's battling. So I don't think he's going to do it, but you never know. He might do it because it would just be a thorn in the establishment side. So more power to him. It's also never been done, but it would be funny to see. But apparently he's considering a visit to the Capitol next week where he's open to pitching himself as Speaker candidate, according to a Republican familiar with internal discussions. If it happens, Trump would come to speak to the House GOP sometime before lawmakers' internal Speaker election, which is set to happen on Wednesday. A final decision hasn't been made. The full GOP will meet Tuesday for an internal candidate forum. Says it's not clear if Trump, the front runner in the 2024 presidential primary, would actually run for Speaker. Winning would require near unanimity from the House GOP, a difficult hurdle for a controversial former president. One of his closest Hill allies, House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan, is already in the race. So let's talk about the other people who are in the race. You do have Jim Jordan. So Jim Jordan is awesome. I would love nothing more than Jim Jordan to be Speaker of the House. He is the guy that is taking on the establishment right now, the FBI, the weaponization of the federal government. He's taking all of that on. He's really also taken on a lot of the COVID lab leak and Fauci and he's really been going after the corruption inside of the government. So I really like Jim Jordan. But he's not the only one in the race. Steve Scalise is also in the race. He's a representative from Louisiana. Jim Jordan is the representative from Ohio. And there's some talks that others might be joining in. But right now, it is Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan. So let me show you something about, I'm going to show you fundraising. The last election cycle. Let's pull up 2022's fundraising on the election fundraising. This is for the House candidates. Oh boy, I cannot read that. So let me try to pull this up somewhere. My screen is really blurry, so I'm unable to see that. So let's see. Okay. In 2022, these are the top congressional candidates in fundraising. The reason why I bring up the fundraising is because you would think, when you think about who's going to be Speaker of the House, what sort of qualifications does that person need? You would think good leadership skills. You would think that they need, that they could bring what they say in the news anyway. This is what they always say to us. They're like, well, Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House because she has great leadership skills, great negotiating skills. She can bring factions of the party together. She's, all of these like blah, 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 honestly, horse crap. That's not actually how they're selected. They're selected based on who just brings in the most money. It's a fundraising game. If you bring in a ton of money, guess what? You get to be Speaker of the House. That's how it works. So it's incentivizing. It's like a game they play. Whoever raises the most money gets powerful positions. You want to be a committee chair? Raise some money. You want to be powerful in the House? You want people to respect you and listen to you and have a leadership position? Raise some money. You want to be Speaker of the House? Raise the most money. So let's go back and look at 2022. Who raised the most money in 2022? Oh, look at that, Kevin McCarthy. Of course he did. And so that is why he ended up being Speaker of the House. He was the number one fundraiser on the Republican side. Nancy Pelosi has been the number one fundraiser on the Democratic side. Katie Porter, interestingly, when we look at the other, now she beat Nancy Pelosi on that fundraising. Hakeem Jeffries is not on here, but as of now, right now, this fundraising cycle, Hakeem Jeffries is out fundraising everybody, Democrat, Republican alike. Hakeem Jeffries is number one. That is why if Democrats win, Hakeem will be Speaker of the House because he's fundraising the most money. But you do have Adam Schiff there, Steve Scalise. So when you look at the Republicans, you've got Kevin McCarthy, number one, but who's the number two Republican fundraiser? Steve Scalise. So that is why his name is in the race. That is why they're thinking that he's got the best chance, the best pathway to the speakership. But the problem is, about a month and a half ago, Steve Scalise came out with the news that he's battling cancer. It is an easily battleable cancer, but he is still battling cancer, and it is going to take a few months of treatment. Now let's keep going on that list. Next Republican on the list is Dan Crenshaw. Let's hope he does not run for Speaker of the House. That guy, he's all about Ukraine, 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 give more money, give more money. So he's next behind Steve Scalise when it comes to fundraising. And what's the name now? Right after Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan. And that's why Jim Jordan is jumping into the race, declaring that he would like to be Speaker of the House. He raises a lot of money, so there's a real possibility. I want to look at 2020 just to compare. And let's see if we see some now. So, okay, number one, Steve Scalise. So he's really a shoe-in there. And then you've got Kevin McCarthy. So Steve Scalise is the guy they're really gunning for. Nancy Pelosi, she's third on the list. And you've got Devin Nunes. That's interesting. Then here it is, AOC. AOC fundraised a bonkers amount of money. And if she keeps that up, there is a possibility she has a pathway in the future to speakership because, again, this is about fundraising. Dan Crenshaw also next on that list. Then you got Adam Schiff. Then Jim Jordan shows up again, Katie Porter. So these are the names that you can see in the mix out of all the 400 and something odd, bazillion useless members of Congress, most of them absolutely useless, if not all of them. These are the names when you try to hone in on who is going to be the next Speaker of the House. All you have to do is look at who fundraised the most, and that's your answer. So it's most likely Steve Scalise. Most likely Steve Scalise is next, but it could be Jim Jordan. He is putting his name out there. There is a possibility because of Steve Scalise's health issues. That is why Jim Jordan maybe has a better shot at it than normal. Otherwise, it would be automatically Steve Scalise, even though they pretend to have a vote. So now that we know all those names, let's get into why Democrats would not save Kevin McCarthy. So he's pissed off at Nancy Pelosi. He's now got her office. He's angry Democrats wouldn't save him. One might ask, why would they save you? Why would you expect them to save you? The expectation was because of decorum and, respect for the seat, for the office of Speaker of the House, that they would vote present. They didn't. The reason why Democrats chose not to, Nancy Pelosi says, it wasn't me. I was out of town. She's in California for Dianne Feinstein's funeral. So she's like, I left everything in the hands of Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem's like, yeah, you know why? Because Ukraine. Yeah, guys, this all comes down to Ukraine. You got to be kidding me. But it's about Ukraine. Democrats are hell bent on that funding for Ukraine. And they have said that they will not support a speaker who will not give gobs and gobs of money to Ukraine. So that being said, let's take a look at how these candidates stack up when it comes to Ukraine. There's actually a website called GOP4Ukraine.com. And this is the GOP Congressional Report Card. And this is a report card that grades Republicans based on excellent. So if they get an A, they're excellent, all the way to F, very poor, on where they stand with Ukraine. And by meaning, do they support Ukraine? So if you support Ukraine, you want to give them lots of money, then you get an A. And if you don't want to give Ukraine money, then you get an F, very poor. Okay. So let's take a look at let's go ahead and just look at these two. Let's look at Steve Scalise first let's just look at Kevin McCarthy real quick. Let's pull up Kevin McCarthy and where he landed on on this. So Kevin McCarthy got a B- with Ukraine. He got an okay. And when you look at it deeper, it says, well, he votes. So the good thing is, according to the people who want you to support Ukraine and only Ukraine and don't care about America, it's all about Ukraine. So they said, well, he voted in favor of the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act of 2022. Okay, he voted in favor of the 2022 Ukraine Supplemental Appropriation. Then he got he didn't vote on this amendment. He didn't vote on that amendment. He didn't vote on this, but he did vote in favor of Ukraine security assistance. But then there's that red mark. Listen to this, he made an anti-Ukraine statement or statements. Now let's read the statements that they claim are anti-Ukraine. Here's the first one from Kevin McCarthy. I support what we're doing in Ukraine. The question to me right now is, would we do a supplemental? Why would you do a supplemental? They're trying to go around the agreement. Okay, that's the anti-Ukraine statement. This is how they gaslight us into this is racism, right? Or something like that. He says, is Zelensky elected to Congress? Is he our president? I don't have to commit anything. I have questions for him. Where's the accountability on the money we've already spent? What is the plan for victory? I think that's what the American public wants to know. That anti-Ukraine bastard, Kevin McCarthy. Here's the last one. But the American border matters, and more Americans are dying on our border than Americans are dying in Ukraine. Yeah, what are real anti-Ukraine things that he said there. Let's go to Steve Scalise and see where he falls on all of this. So Steve Scalise gets a B, so he's a little bit better than Kevin McCarthy. I think most of us would like to see somebody who gets a worse grade, I guess, because we would like to see less funding for Ukraine, more funding for America, more focus on America, less likelihood to get into World War III. I don't know, those kinds of things. Small things, right? No World War III, tiny, who cares? So he apparently voted, green on all of the things, even the ones that Kevin McCarthy didn't vote on. He voted, but then what did they not like? Why does he get a B and not an A? Because he made ambiguous or neutral statements about Ukraine. He says, obviously, there's concern that the money is going to places that it's intended. Having any taxpayer dollars that go anywhere, whether it's domestically or abroad, deserves scrutiny. How dare he? Who are these people that think that is anti-Ukraine? Really? Okay, Jim Jordan. Now he got an F. Jim Jordan, let's see where he's at. So Jim Jordan's grade, very poor, F is what he got. And the reason for that, here it is. He did vote in favor of the Ukraine Democracy Defense Lend-Lease Act, but then he voted against everything else. And he made an anti-Ukraine statement or statements. He said, well, I'm all for helping Ukraine. I just don't think it should be the American taxpayer continue to give and give and give. So, let's hope it moves in the right direction as it seems to be doing. And that was in September of 2022. And he also says Zelensky doesn't get to define how America tax dollars are spent. And that's the fundamental question. Wow. So anti Ukraine to say Zelensky doesn't get to decide where American tax dollars go. Yes, he does. I mean, is that what they're trying to say when they say that? So these are the people who might be Speaker of the House. It's important to know this because whoever's next is going to be really leading the charge on whether or not we're giving more and more funding to Ukraine. The good news is, in my opinion, is that none of the candidates that we're seeing, or Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan, I believe that also Kevin Hern is, let's see, what's his grade? Kevin Hern is also talking about running for speakership. Oh, good. He's got very poor. He's got a very poor grading. Now, the reason, this is important, obviously, because this is about how much money is going to be going to Ukraine. And rather than negotiating for peace, rather than pushing them into peace so that we don't march into World War III, so that more Ukrainian lives aren't lost, rather than doing all of that, you've got, we've got people on here who have, like Dan Crenshaw, he's got an excellent A rating. They love him because he pushes all for all of that. And so what we're seeing now is that the speakers, the potential speakers, Steve Scalise has got a B, so he's better than Kevin McCarthy. Not ideal, but at least the other two candidates that might be going into the race have, they're more measured in where they want American tax dollars to go. And certainly, if Donald Trump was going to be the Speaker of the House, he certainly has made himself clear on exactly what he expects to see in that battle, and that is peace, a negotiation, an agreement. And that is what the warmongers in Washington want nothing to do with. They do not want to see an agreement or anything of the like. So interesting. We'll see how this all shakes out. They are going to vote next Wednesday. We will see if Trump actually throws his hat in the race, just to, I don't know, put himself in the news. Certainly one way to not allow them to continue shoving you outside of the news cycle, right? To say, oh, this person, we don't want to talk about him. Besides, all they talk about is his cases, right? The legal troubles that he's in, and they don't want to address anything else. And so I guess if he were Speaker of the House, he'd get a lot of different press. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I don't know. Or he's just wanting to scare them, showing up to Washington and just scare them and make them think, I'm back. Hey, Nancy, going to be seeing you a lot. So we'll see how that goes. All right, guys. I got to tell you about a great product, Lean. This is made from Brick House Nutrition. They are the great people that bring us a Field of Greens. And Lean is just this really wonderful product that really will help you shed the pounds. I know it's really tough, and sometimes it just feels like the pounds do not come off. But what Lean does is it does a 3-power punch to your fat. The first thing is it curbs your appetite, and that's something that you're really going to want to do. And this is all natural, by the way. The second thing is it's going to help metabolize the fat you already have on your body. So that is going to burn off. And that is what you want ultimately to get your lean pre-pandemic body. And the last thing that it does is it lowers your blood sugar, which is really important for all those insulin resistant people out there. I know I'm one of them. So this stuff really does help. I really like it. It doesn't give me the jitters. I think it's a really great product. You can get 15% off your first order. And of all the Field of Greens orders, anything that you browse around fieldofgreens.com, check it all out. Anything that you like, put it in your cart, including Lean, and get 15% off your first order when you use promo code Kim. So again, that is fieldofgreens.com. Use promo code Kim and get 15% off your first order.